Live from a grungy kitchen table located in Annapolis, Maryland's scenic and historic capital, it's the Maryland Crabs Podcast. With each episode, your hosts, Tim Hamilton, John Frenay, and the occasional guest will dive in and pick apart the stuff that really matters most to you. We're too lazy to actually solve any of these problems, but we can definitely stir the pot. From schools, politics, parking in the fire lane, to those horrible people who drive BMWs. And here with this week's episode, live from the kitchen table, Tim Hamilton and John Frenay.
Hey, this is John Frenay, and welcome to the Maryland Crabs Podcast. We are here atop Blackwall Hitch in Eastport this week, and we've got a couple really cool guests, a very cool story to tell a little bit today. But before we do that, I just want to let everybody know to make sure to follow us on Twitter at MD Crabs Podcast. You can like us on Facebook at the Maryland Crabs Podcast. We've got a page and a group there. Email is info@themarylandcrabs. The website is themarylandcrabs.com. And go to iTunes, Google Play, and all that kind of stuff and give us a rating. That would be great there. Blackwall Hitch was so awesome to give us a room, the captain's quarters upstairs to overlooking the deck and the harbor, which is really appropriate because we are here with Rear Admiral Frank Thorpe and Mary Winnefeld, who are names that are probably not familiar to anybody right now, but soon they will be. Welcome, guys. How are you?
Great. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us here.
What we're here, we've got big happenings for Annapolis, and it's something that Annapolis has never seen ever. Is that true?
So as far back as anyone can tell in history, there has never been a ship commissioned in Annapolis, Maryland. We know there's never been one commissioned at the Naval Academy, and we know there hasn't been a ship commissioned anywhere in Annapolis in the last 100 years. Now before that, John, we're a little light on our history, and it may have happened at the old Trumpy Yacht Yard.
That's it. Well, that is the big news. We're having a ship that will be commissioned here at the United States Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland in 2018. And the ship is the USS Sioux City. What is the commissioning of a ship? I mean, obviously it's the launch, the official launch and putting it into service. What all is involved with commissioning a ship, and why is it such a big deal to the crew members and to the seamen that are on the ship and the officers and the enlisted personnel? What's commissioning all about?
That's a great question, John. And before a ship is commissioned, it's just a hulk of steel and a bunch of people. And when that ship is placed into commission, kind of like a boat here in Annapolis, it then becomes a craft. And in the Navy's parlance, it becomes a warship. So it is not a USS, it is not United States ship, Sioux City, until the commanding officer places it in commission and reports that it is ready for duty. Before that, they're just working on the ship. It's kind of shipyard work, and it's a gruel. After that, they're an active member of the U.S. Navy, ready to deploy around the world and defend our nation.
So as soon as the commanding officer puts it in commission, theoretically it's ready to fire its guns, get underway, go wherever it needs to be going virtually immediately. I mean, there's a mobilization part to get it. I mean, you don't just sort of throw off a line.
Exactly. So the crew already is training. And in today's environment, with the high technology that's available, they're doing a lot of training actually ashore. As they build the ship, they'll create their processes and perfect their processes. And then it takes some amount of time after a ship is commissioned to do what we call workups. So they'll go out to sea and independently, and then they'll also go out to sea with other ships and train. And it takes a period of a couple months to a year before the ship actually deploys for the first time. But the day she's commissioned, she flies the American flag, and she's an American warfighting ship. And if the commander-in-chief wanted to deploy her, she'd be ready to go.
Okay, so then when it's commissioned, she goes through sea trials after it's built, and that's strictly seaworthiness and making sure that it can hit its speeds and do its turns and perform as it's designed.
Yep.
And
so
then it's delivered to the Navy.
So it starts a little earlier than that. So she's doing acceptance trials this summer, which is a version of sea trials. So she'll go to sea a couple times to do exactly what you're talking about, to test those systems, make sure everything works well. And she's being built up near Milwaukee. And so she'll have to come through the St. Lawrence River and out in the ocean and up the bay to get to Annapolis. So she'll have some sea time, and during that time she'll do one or two other sets of sea trials. And then after she's deployed, then she'll do training, which they will no longer be sea trials. They'll actually be training environment.
Okay, and then that's training the crew on the ship.
Exactly. To operate
where the buttons are and which, how to steer it and everything else there.
Exactly.
Where do they typically commission ships? I mean, we've said that they've never happened in Annapolis, which blows my mind, but where are they typically commissioned? Are they typically in San Diego or Norfolk or...
Well, back before the early 80s, ships were generally commissioned in the shipyard that they were built. And that's why we don't know, prior to 100 years ago here in Annapolis, when they were building smaller Navy ships here across the creek, across the harbor from Annapolis, if there was ever a ship commissioned there could have been. But in the early 1980s, the Navy made a decision to start commissioning the ships around the country. And so a lot of ships will get commissioned in Norfolk, Virginia, or San Diego, or Mayport, Florida, where this ship is going to be home ported. But the Navy likes to commission ships around the country in order for local citizens to learn about the Navy and to be able to celebrate their Navy.
Well, that's certainly pick the right town to do that, I think. The ships, are they built in America or are they, assembled in America? How does that work? Because I know some of the finest shipbuilders, I know from the cruise ships, I know there's Fincantieri, which is in Italy. I think there's a couple others that do that. Do they also produce U.S. warships?
All U.S. warships are built in the United States. Now, John, it's interesting that you would mention Fincantieri because as a company, they're actually involved in the building of the USS Sioux City. But the ship is built in Wisconsin with mostly American parts. I mean, it's an American warship. Sure. American ship builders are bending the steel and running the wires.
Okay. And I imagine some of the electronics probably are foreign or something like that. But but it's mostly built in the U.S. to serve the U.S.
Absolutely. There's about 5 or 6 major shipyards around the United States that build our warships.
Very cool. Now, are they operated by private companies or are they a Navy operated thing? I mean, I know in Philadelphia has the U.S. Navy shipyard, which I think does retrofits or did.
Well, great question. Back in the day, 30, 40 years ago, there were what we call public shipyards that belonged to the U.S. Navy, and that ships were built in public shipyards, in U.S. Navy shipyards. Those days have changed, and no longer does the Navy actually build the ships. It's all now done in privately owned corporate shipyards.
With contracts with the Navy on that.
Exactly.
USS Sioux City. What kind of a ship is it?
It's a littoral combat ship, and it's designed to go fast and to go into shallow water. John, the idea was shortly after Desert Storm and some of the lessons we learned back about ships in Desert Storm in the early 90s was that the Navy needed ships that could go into shallower waters than the ones we have now. Most destroyers and cruisers, they need 30 feet of water, 35 feet of water, and they do about 30 knots, a little more than 30 miles an hour. And it was learned through Desert Storm and then in war games that the Navy played that we needed ships that could go into shallower water, up closer to the coast, and go fast. So the littoral combat ship, for instance, it actually doesn't have a propeller. It's a jet ski. It's a 380-foot long jet ski.
Okay. Rolls-Royce.
And built by Rolls-Royce, and it only takes 13 feet of water, which is why we can, for the first time ever, commission a ship at the Naval Academy because it'll be able to tie up to the quay wall.
The Severn is not that deep of a river. Wow.
Right.
So this is jet propelled, not
correct,
by not a propeller. So I don't know how much fouling of propellers is a problem for Navy ships, traditional ones or not. But that's
John. My first ship, we wrapped a anchor chain around the propeller, so doesn't happen often. But just like running a boat around Annapolis, you run along through a crab trap or, by a buoy and you wrap a line around the anchor, around the propeller, it's a problem.
It's funny, a little bit of an off topic, but I was talking to Mickey Arison, who's the chairman of Carnival Corp, and when they launched their first ship in Miami, he was a little kid. His father had started. He said, "Oh, it's just this fun ship. We're going out." It left the port of Miami. It went out and it ran into a sandbar and it ran aground. And they're watching from shore, waving goodbye, and they see the ships just start to list a little bit, and they're going, finally figure out what the heck's going on. And he says, yeah, we've run aground. What do we do? He said, we got to wait till high tide and we'll come off.
That's not going to happen at the USS Sioux City.
Yeah. And they said, well, open up the bar.
Well, there you go.
Which also
won't happen on the USS Sioux City.
On the USS Sioux City. But Mary, you're a sponsor. What is the sponsor doing? What is the sponsor of a ship?
Well, first of all, it's a great honor to be a sponsor of a ship. And the sponsor of a ship is someone who is with the ship from day one, from the keel laying ceremony, all the way throughout the life of the ship.
So you've seen this ship.
I have seen the ship. I have been up in Wisconsin.
You've laid hands on this ship.
My initials, I did the keel laying ceremony, and my initials are with the ship now. That will be with the ship forever. I was there for the christening when I got to take the bottle and christen the ship and watch her get launched into the water sideways, which is
okay. So the difference between a christening and a commissioning. A christening is when it actually floats for the first time.
When it floats for the first time, when it's into the water.
Okay.
And that part of that ceremony is what's called a mast laying ceremony, where before they put the mast on the ship, you can put personal items in there which will give it spirit, bring it good luck through the ship.
Right.
And so it's my role to imbue sort of my spirit into the ship for the life of the ship. So myself and the USS or the city of Sioux City, we will be with that ship forever. As Frank mentioned earlier, we have the commissioning committee that's working up to the commissioning, but myself and the city of Sioux City will be with that ship forever, and just giving it spirit, watching over it, taking care of families, which has been a big part of my life since I've been involved with the Navy for many, many years. So it's your spirit on the ship.
Well, that's awesome. I'll tell you what. Let me take a little bit of a break. When we come back, I want to talk about how you came to this. I mean, is there like a list I can sign? I want to find out where the list is that I can sign up to be a sponsor of the ship. We'll be back in a minute.
The Annapolis campaign season's in full swing, so on June 28th, we'll be hosting an Annapolis mayoral debate. Come on, this is serious.
What?
Really, is this the best you can do? Best song?
Okay, all right.
The Annapolis campaign season is in full swing, so on June 28th, we will be hosting an Annapolis mayoral debate. Okay, this is stupider.
Stupider? It's not even a word.
Can we just get this done, please?
Okay. You know what? Hold on. Got it. Start over.
Okay. The Annapolis campaign season's in full swing, so on June 28th, we'll be hosting an Annapolis mayoral debate that... Damn it, John! No, wait, I like this. No, keep rolling. We're bringing all 4 mayoral candidates to Ram's Head on stage on Wednesday, June 28th for the first forum with all 4 candidates. It's free and the doors will open at 6 p.m. with the forum beginning right at 7. No free food, but Ram's Head on stage will have food and drink available for purchase.
And on the technical end, we will be recording it for a podcast, and if the internet gods are smiling on us, we'll be broadcasting it live on Facebook on the All Annapolis and Maryland Crabs Facebook pages.
Wait, I thought you didn't know anything about this.
Shut up, it's a promo. Just read the script.
But we need your help. If you have a topic or question for the candidates, please drop us an email at info@themarylandcrabs.com.
Or you can feel free to tweet us at MD Crabs Podcast, or leave us a message or a comment on Facebook.
So there you go. Be an informed voter and hear what Mayor Panelides, Senator Astle, Gavin Buckley, and Nevin Young have in store for Annapolis, if they win.
And we are back. We are here with Rear Admiral Frank Thorpe, retired from the United States Navy, and Mary Winnefeld, who is the sponsor of the USS Sioux City, which is going to be commissioned here in Annapolis at the Naval Academy in 2018. And we're going to get to the specifics on that a little bit later, but we were talking a little bit about becoming a sponsor, and you laid your hands on this ship from the day that the keel was laid to the day that it was floated in the christening, and sort of imbuing your personality. Well, first of all, are you from Sioux City? Okay,
No.
I didn't know whether there was a connection between the name of the ship.
No. Although I would love to be, because Frank and I were fortunate enough to fly out to Sioux City and spend a few days with the great folks of Sioux City. And I am from the Midwest. I'm from a small town in Wisconsin. So I felt right at home in Sioux City. And I couldn't ask for a better sponsor city, namesake city, than Sioux City, because they are so excited about this.
Now, how did Sioux City get named? I mean, why Sioux City? Why was Sioux City selected as the name for this ship, or any town name for any ship?
Well, the name is chosen by the Secretary of the Navy. He's the one that gets to pick the names as well as pick the sponsors of the ship.
So we need a Secretary of the Navy from Glen Burnie. Right, the USS Glen Burnie.
So we have
it's got
a
a nice
USS.
ring to it.
We have a USS Annapolis. It's a
Yes.
submarine.
I do know that we have the USS Annapolis. That's why I didn't go there. But I don't think we've got a Glen Burnie.
No, we don't. Or Severna Park. But that'd be fun.
But we work on it. But now, very specifically, okay, how did you get selected? How were you picked? Was there an application?
There's no application. You get a call from the Secretary of the Navy asking if you would do the honor of being a sponsor of a ship. So it's by invitation only.
So there are some people that somewhere along the line within the muck of the Navy administration said, "Hey, let's give Mary Winnefeld a call and see if she's interested."
Yes, yes.
Do you know who nominated you, or who put the plug in, or you got your ideas?
No, I have no idea who put the plug in. It could have been, I come from a long Navy family, 5th generation.
That's got to be a surreal call.
And
be a little
it
bit of a surreal call.
It is a surreal call. And
wait, let me call you back. I'm not sure this is a legitimate number, or something along those lines.
It's a great honor, though. But for me, my husband was in the military for 37 years. His father was was the commandant at the Naval Academy here in Annapolis.
Let's talk about that. You said, okay, your father-in-law was
Yes.
the commandant of midshipmen at the Naval Academy.
Yes.
And your husband had served 37
years
in the Navy?
In the Navy.
Okay.
Yeah, and before, if you keep going back, then there was a great-grandfather that was a submarine tender, and, military service goes all the way back to the Prussian Army on that side of the family. So, and now I have a son who is a midshipman, and he will be commissioned in 2018, the same year as the USS Sioux City.
That is very. Has he given any indication as to? He's a second-class midshipman right now. So has he given any indication into what he wants to do?
He has, and he, in the worst way, would love to be in some operational, whether it be subsurface or aviation. Unfortunately, he's color deficient. And so that has nixed doing aviation or submarines or surface. So, there's other options out there, but
he could feasibly serve on the USS Sioux City.
He could in some other role than like a surface warfare officer or.
Right.
Yeah. But as Frank mentioned earlier, the really neat thing about the U.S. Sioux City is that it is highly configurable. It's not built just for one mission. It can be done. It can go in for humanitarian relief. It can carry people in. It can carry supplies in. So it's not like it was built for just going into a war zone.
Firing guns and so forth.
So John, I'd like to go back because Mary's being way too humble. The selection to be a sponsor of a ship in the Navy is the single responsibility of the Secretary of the Navy. As she said, it's naming the ship, naming ships, and naming sponsors.
Now, when did you get selected? Was that Secretary Mavis?
Mavis.
Okay, so it was.
Yeah.
So, and that honor is given to people who have committed their lives, mostly to service with having to do with the Navy, but also the military or some other service to their country. We only have a little more than 300 ships in the Navy, and we only commission about 10 or 12 ships a year. So it is a single honor. And Mary's too humble to tell you this on your podcast, but Mary was selected because of a lifelong commitment to the men and women who serve in the United States military. In her early ages, with her and Sandy Winnefeld, her commitment to people in the Navy was widely known throughout the Navy. And then as she and Sandy made admiral, following in the footsteps of his father, she became widely known around the military for her just very avid support of the men and women in the Navy, for wounded warriors. I mean, this is a person, John, sitting here who has absolutely committed her life to the betterment of those men and women serving in the military and their families. And that's why, singularly, why Secretary Mabus made that phone call to Mary and asked her, and actually asked her to honor the ship by agreeing to be the sponsor.
So it wasn't to accept the honor of being the sponsor, but to honor the ship. That's pretty phenomenal. That's pretty powerful.
Well, I consider it an honor.
Yeah, no, it's that's some powerful words, sir. That's
He's very kind.
Unbelievable. What when the ship is commissioned? I mean, what is your role going forward? Obviously, I think you probably follow it on some app, so I could probably call you up in 4 years and say, "Hey, Mary, where's the ship?" It's like
I don't know if we'll ever get to a point. Hopefully, we won't get to a point where the app will know exactly where the ship is at, because we got to.
It's incognito today,
but I want to stay very close to the crew throughout her life, and also have that bond with Sioux City, so that both of us together can help support the ship as she goes forward, no matter what she's doing. And that's everything from being there when there's changes of command to we're looking at having a scholarship. An educational scholarship on the ship for the service members and their families. Finding different ways to support the crew members and the ship throughout her life. So, the crew members will come and go, commanding officers will come and go. The one stable thing throughout the life will be myself and
Sioux City.
In Sioux City.
In Sioux City. Now, will you be, I don't say expected, but do you anticipate or desire to meet the change in command on the ship when it does change command? I mean, I
would love to. Yes. Yeah. No, I mean, I would.
It seems to me that this is not too dissimilar from the midshipman sponsor program that we've got here in Annapolis, where local families can sponsor a midshipman, and they're there. They can there's somebody I can come and cry on their shoulder, or bitch or squawk or moan or something along those lines. I mean, to a point. I don't expect you to be getting phone calls in the middle of the night because somebody's in some not so great place or whatnot. But I think that probably means an awful lot to the men and women that get on these ships.
It is, and hopefully a big passion of mine and advocacy has been for the families, because we don't have strong families, you're not going to have a strong military. So whether it's the families back home or mom and dad in Kansas, hopefully I can be someone that they can reach out to, someone who has lived the military life, has raised kids in a Navy family, to be able to provide advice, support.
And you're doing a lot of that right now, right? Are you?
I'm still pretty involved.
That's pretty phenomenal. How is your son doing at the academy?
He is doing really well. Loves it. It fits him to a T. So, unfortunately, his father-in-law or his grandfather passed away a year and a half ago to pancreatic cancer. But I know that he's smiling down on him. And my father-in-law, Jim Winnefeld, just absolutely loved the academy and the Navy life. And his grandson, James Winnefeld, also just really fits well into the Naval Academy lifestyle.
Right. You said that you'd put your initials on the keel, and some men where you can put a little bit of your personality and your the juju, the karma, whatever you want to call it, into the ship. What have you hidden? What little secrets? What secrets lie below the gunnels of the ship? Well,
one little secret is a pin that I received from the Navy Marine Corps Relief Society, and it's a dove of peace. So my hope is that just the mere presence of the U.S. Sioux City, if she's in harm's way, will not have to act on anything. But just her mere presence will bring peace to wherever she goes, and also to bring peace to the crew as they go forward. And
that pin is that hidden?
It's hidden in a special box on the ship that it won't see the light of day until they.
So we're not coming up the gangplank and seeing a big old framed box with say this is Mary's dove of peace that she wishes this. This is okay. So there's a lot of superstition that goes behind this.
There is a lot of. In fact, speaking of superstition, when she was christened, they let you go the day before and practice. because it's superstitious if the bottle doesn't break
Right,
on
right.
the very first try.
Right.
So between practicing the day before and having two sons that played baseball, gave me some good tips on following through and not slowing down. And so
Right.
the bottle broke on the first try.
So you were, when you actually christened the ship, you actually swung the bottle into the hull.
That's correct.
Okay, so it wasn't on a contraption where you
Nope.
released it and it
No.
slammed against the hull. This was the real deal.
Yeah, it's the real deal. Touching, the front of the ship. And then upon that, then they release her into the water. And if you haven't seen it, I think you can go online. There are YouTube videos of her sliding sideways into the water, which if you're the person who's right next to it, who's just...
You're still drying off?
Yeah, from the champagne, and you watch this go into the water, it almost looks like it's going to turtle and go all the way around. But
Have you actually sailed on her?
no, I have not.
Will you actually sail on her?
I am going to try to go up there this summer when she's going through her trials and at least get a couple of hours on there if I can.
Okay.
And then who knows when she's making her way to Annapolis if there's a chance. Yeah, most definitely.
Certainly. Well, this is great. Now, what we're going to take a little bit of a break. When we come back, I want to talk a little bit about the actual commissioning ceremony that's going to happen here. And I think both of you, Rear Admiral Frank Thorpe and Mary Winnefeld, can help me out with what to expect. And we want to talk a little bit about the commissioning committee and everything else that may come around with this big thing that's happening next summer in Annapolis.
Hi, this is Anne Arundel County Executive Steve Shue. We're battling a heroin epidemic that we can't fight alone. Talk to your kids about the danger of drugs today. The road to heroin abuse often starts with a prescription from a doctor. Don't be silent about this problem. Talk to your children. Ask your doctor to provide only the minimum number of pills necessary. Go to denialisdeadly.org right now for the tools you need to stop heroin addiction before it starts.
And we're here with Rear Admiral Frank Thorpe and Mary Winnefeld, who is the sponsor of the USS Sioux City, who will be sailing into Annapolis next summer, the summer of 18. And that's summer, from what Admiral Thorpe had told me, is sort of a weak kind of term. It's not real summer. It's what you say it was like April, May, June?
Yeah, we look at May, June, July as the time frame, John. The ship's being built in Milwaukee. And so one thing that will have
Milwaukee, beer and ships.
Marinette.
Yeah, Marinette, right outside Milwaukee, near Milwaukee.
Marinette Menominee.
And so it'll have to come through the St. Lawrence River, which freezes over in the winter. So following the freeze, the ship will come around through the St. Lawrence, out in the Atlantic, and up the Chesapeake Bay. And the neat thing is what we're looking to do when she comes up is we're looking to put a flotilla to greet the ship. And,
at the mouth of the bay?
Yeah.
And escort?
And have a bunch of local boats, local yachtsmen from the yacht clubs and perhaps the YPs from the Naval Academy greet her and sail her into Annapolis in a pretty big celebration.
So this is, okay, so we're waiting for the St. Lawrence River to thaw out.
Correct.
So let me get this straight. The Navy can coordinate the Blue Angels flying over the stadium down to the 10th of a second, but they can't get this river. Can't get the boat through the river.
So
It's Mother Nature.
Truth be known, I think if we wanted to break the ice, we might be able to. I'm not a St. Lawrence River person, but we got to let nature do what nature does, and we'll bring it around in the spring and commission her in the summer.
Right. Okay, so in May, June, and July, sometime next year, put everybody's mind at rest. We talked a little about this off recording, but not during commissioning week.
Oh, no.
You know, the Naval Academy has been great. The superintendent and the entire staff of the Naval Academy are part of the team to do this. They're going to carry a lot of the workload for doing it. But the one thing it would make, not only for the Naval Academy's sake, but for Annapolis, for the hotels, because a lot of people will come into town. About half the crew is expected to bring their family into town. A lot of the companies who have worked on the ship will be in town in Annapolis for that week. And so a lot of people from Sioux City, Iowa will come in. So it's a pretty big economic impact on the city of Annapolis. So we wouldn't want to put it smack dab on the top of the biggest event of the year.
That's it's pretty phenomenal. I mean, when you think about it, I mean, so bringing a ship here, they're gonna crack a bottle of champagne and sail away. And it's really a big procedure. Now, this is not paid for by the Naval Academy, correct? Obviously not, because it's a Navy thing. How does this? I mean, the ship obviously is paid by taxpayer funded, and the U.S. government builds the ship.
Correct.
But all of the pomp and circumstances and the ceremonies and whatnot, how does that get funded? Is that a federally funded thing? Or
no, not at all. So the Navy, as you said, pays to build a ship. And the Navy actually pays for the actual ceremony where the speakers and all that. But the Navy does not pay, and the taxpayer does not pay a penny for the week of festivities that go into commissioning of a ship. It starts when the ship arrives, which is generally about the weekend before the Saturday commissioning. So the ship will be here 6 or 7 days, and it'll kick off with the arrival, which, as I mentioned earlier, will be a big deal. With the harbor will be packed, and et cetera, et cetera.
The fireboats with the hose strings.
Exactly.
The whole 9 yards.
Exactly. I mean, it'll be very festive. Significantly, we've had a ship like this tie up once before, but not a brand new ship and have the pomp and circumstance. So we'll start off with a cruise picnic, and then every day there'll be another event. Because the whole idea of this, John, is to connect the city of Annapolis, Annapolitans, and folks here in Maryland with the ship and the Navy and all that.
Sioux City and everything. Well, the only thing I'm thinking that it might be similar, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is back in 97, I think, when the Whitbread, which is now called the Volvo Penta Ocean Race, came into town. And I remember when the sailboats came in, there was a big brouhaha, there was and whatnot. And I think it's probably very similar to what we saw there. And that was a really big deal for the city. The ship is obviously going to be docked on the seawall at the Naval Academy.
Yep. And another similarity, John, is the tall ships. Back in the day when I was in high school here in Annapolis in '76, when the tall ships came through, I hadn't thought of it, but there's a lot of similarity there because there was a lot of fundraising that went into that.
That's right.
And that was a big festive maritime event. And similar to us, with a week long of festivities, we're going to be raising money and really hopefully bringing as literally thousands of people. We think the ceremony, the Naval Academy has said we have the capacity to put 5,000 or 6,000 people on the pier for the ceremony itself. So it'll be big. It'll be one of the top 15, 20 events of Annapolis in 2018.
What will there be opportunities for the public to? Obviously, they'll be able to see the ship and get onto the yard and be able to see the ship. Will they be able to get actually on the ship and see? Will there be any kind of public tours?
Absolutely, there will be tours, and it'll be limited by only two things. One, sheer number of people. We expect there will be a lot of people who want to see the ship. The commanding officer, Mary and I have met him. He is fantastic, and he wants to bring as many people to tour the ship as possible. And then the second one is security, and the Naval Academy has agreed that we will do ship touring. They will host ship touring, so people will be able to go onto the yard. And John, that's one of the biggest things, because when I was involved in the Annapolis Film Festival, I was struck by how many people had not been to the Naval Academy last year when they did the first opening night. So our hope is that literally thousands of Annapolitans who have lived here for 10, 15 years but have never stepped foot on the Naval Academy, that they'll come down to the Naval Academy and tour perhaps the first Navy ship they've ever been on.
You're right. We all too often, no matter where you live, I think you sort of neglect your own backyard and what you have. And I've always been a sort of a proponent of being a tourist in your hometown. I mean, every now and then I'll go take the Harbor Queen, and there's just something kind of cool to do. But the Naval Academy, for anybody that's listening, whether they're here in Annapolis or elsewhere, is just a very special. It's just an incredible place. It's beautiful. The history, the I don't want to call it folklore, but the traditions that are there, the folklore. You've got, from the Herndon climb to the sea trials to the, commissioning to the football games to.
Well, very much so. I mean, that's kind of, my son who's there now, who adored his grandfather, and his grandfather who was went there and graduated in 1951 and then was the commandant. It's something that they definitely shared together. the spirit of the academy.
Now, did your husband graduate from the academy as well? Or?
He did not.
Okay.
He didn't know if he wanted to make it a career, and ended up being in for 37 years.
Answer that
But
question.
he didn't, he didn't want to take a spot from somebody who knew that's exactly what they wanted to do. So he did not. So as he says, he was the black sheep, but now his son is there. So
It seemed to have worked out okay.
It worked out okay.
But John, the wall, when I was a midshipman, I used to think that wall was designed to keep the mids in. Now that I'm retired from the Navy and I've come back to Annapolis and love the city, what I realized, that wall is also a psychological barrier to keep that people don't want to walk through. It's kind of like the Chesapeake Bay Bridge. People don't think twice about driving into D.C., but to go over the Eastern Shore, well, I got to go across the bridge. And so hopefully with this event...
Yeah, it's not Montana.
Exactly. Exactly.
It's Kent Island. Yeah, no, I hear that.
It is a neat event, though, to have the commission here, because there are many cities that actually, and Navy leagues, that really fight hard and to get a commissioning in their city. Florida is a big one. There are several Navy leagues down there that really try hard to get.
So what did it take to get? And Frank, you're chairman of the committee for and the official name you said was the U.S. Navy...
The USS Sioux City Commissioning Committee.
USS Sioux City Commissioning Committee, which is a separate nonprofit.
So we are actually operating under the auspices of the U.S. Navy League. As Mary just said, the Navy League throughout the country is involved in supporting the Navy, the men and women who serve in the Navy, and they actually coordinate a lot of these commissionings. So there were several different people who all had the idea to commission a ship here in Annapolis. And Dave Gray, who's a very active member of the Navy League, Dave and I chatted actually back when the Zumwalt was being commissioned in Baltimore. Okay. And we said, we should do this in Annapolis. And again, the Annapolis Film Festival.
Those tend to be the worst ideas. You're sitting there going like, we should do that.
And I will tell you already, that was just a couple months ago, and already there, the amount of work that we're putting into this. There's a couple times where I've said, why did we raise our hand? But as an ensign, I was taught not to volunteer. But so we met with the Annapolis Navy League twice and explained to them the pros, the amount of work. It's a lot of work. We need a lot of volunteers in the city of Annapolis and a lot of financial support. And the Annapolis Navy League, John, they're just a great group of Americans, great group of Annapolitans who have a keen interest in the Navy and the Naval Academy and in Annapolis, and they embrace the idea. So we're not, the commissioning committee is operating as a 501c3 as a part of the Annapolis Navy League.
Okay, the Annapolis Navy League is a new term for me. Mm-hmm. I'm not a native. I've been here since the mid-'90s. Mm-hmm. What is the Annapolis Navy League?
So the Annapolis
and can anybody join? Is that just a military family thing, or is it somebody with an interest? Is it
absolutely anybody can join? As a matter of fact, Dave and Beth Gray are very active members. Dave is the chief of staff on the committee. Beth, his wife, is the treasurer of the Annapolis Navy League. They have neither served in the Navy nor have anybody family in the Navy, and they're some of the most avid supporters of the Naval Academy and the Navy. So the United States Navy League was formed back in the days of President Roosevelt as an organization who would support the Navy and be proponents for a strong maritime presence as we were really evolving into a strong maritime country. And the Annapolis Navy League, cities have chapters, and the Annapolis Navy League meets at the Naval Academy. Again, don't have to be don't have to have any military experience, don't have to have access to the Naval Academy or whatever. You can join, and they do monthly outings and meetings where they get great speakers, and they go to baseball games and basketball games as a group. It's a civic group that's looking to contribute their time, volunteer their time to make our country better.
So it's similar to the Rotary or something along those lines, but with a focus on maritime and the Naval Academy, and actually not necessarily the Naval Academy. Well, I guess Annapolis would be the Naval Academy.
Mainly the Naval Academy, but also with the Naval Station across the river and the sailors that are over there. They do food baskets over the holidays for the sailors. And under the Small World category, my father, back in the 50s, was the first vice president of the Annapolis Navy League chapter.
It's all coming full circle, isn't it?
It does all come around.
What comes around goes around. You're raising money. What do we need this money for? We've got plenty of events coming on that are going to be going on for a full week within the city of Annapolis. What type of events can we expect to see? I mean, obviously we've got the arrival of the ship. Yep. We've got tours of the ship. We've got the commissioning ceremony.
Yep.
And what else could we expect from the week when she's here in port?
So we're raising money to do three things, and to your point, the first one is the events. We'll kick off when the ship gets here with an arrival ceremony, and then early in the week we'll do a cruise reception where we'll welcome the crew to Annapolis, Maryland. There'll be about 115 sailors that come with the ship.
Is that what her? And I'm going to use the wrong term, capacity, but is that what her crew is? About 150?
Great question. Her crew size is actually 60 people. The Navy has done a great work in using technology to reduce the amount of people that have to serve on ships because people are very expensive, and
sure.
And also the Navy has gone to 2 crews. So instead of just having one crew where every crew needs some rest and relaxation, they have 2 crews, each one of them about 60 people. So while one crew is deployed overseas, the other crew is back here in the United States training.
Okay.
And then they swap out. We've been doing that on ballistic missile submarines for some time, and now we're transferring that to other types of ships. And the LCS, the littoral combat ship, was actually designed with that idea. And then also the ship has modules. So one of the best things about this ship is that we design a ship and commission it. They last 30 years. Well, technology 30 years from now is going to be so different. We can't even imagine 30 years ago to today. And so these ships have the capability to literally lift out a module and replace it with another module. So those modules have people that are involved in it too.
Okay. So if it were working as a hospital ship, it might have more crew because you've got a medical crew on there versus just a material supply ship.
Exactly. It'll have unmanned vehicles, unmanned underwater vehicles, unmanned aerial vehicles that operate it, and those will take sailors. So back to the week's events. So we'll kick off with a welcoming, then we'll do a cruise reception, and then we'll do a couple other events. Mary will host a sponsors lunch, which is a very classy event for those people who are involved really in the commissioning and the christening of the ship. Then the night before, on Friday night, we'll do a big reception, most likely at Dahlgren Hall at the Naval Academy, with hundreds of people, 300, 400 people, who have really come out to support the crew and the ship. And John, I see that as a room full of those Annapolitans who are committed to make Annapolis great and committed to the relationship.
With a giant salute to the crew that's going to be embarking on something new and exciting.
Exactly. And so actually, Admiral Carter was telling me that they just fit the entire brigade of midshipmen into Dahlgren Hall. That's 4,000 people. So I use the number 300, 400, but it could grow a lot bigger.
Sure.
And then the day of the event, we'll put on. The committee gives me a hard time because I use the expression, we're going to have a reception that'll knock your socks off. And I have to say knock your socks off because we're here in Eastport and everybody's going to burn them anyway. So, but we'll have a reception there for 5,000 or 6,000 people right there on the point where the mast of the main is. And we'll have food and beverages and stuff like that. And then while people are eating, some people will tour the ship, some people will grab something to eat, and we'll have a big celebration.
And mingle with the crew that's there too. So they'll be out having it.
And their families.
Yeah.
All right. Now, is that going to be like an admission event type thing, or and I mean, how are, I guess specifically, how are you raising the funds? I mean, are you looking for somebody to write a check right now,
yes,
I'll always take that.
Yes, we are, John, and we'll take it right now. I appreciate you pulling your checkbook out. No, we have a website, USS Sioux City, LCS11.org. That's the best way to donate is by going to our website, USS Sioux City, LCS11.org. But the event is open to the public. People will have to register, mainly from a security standpoint, but the event is open to the public. This ship was paid for by taxpayer dollars, so there's no private event here. The commissioning is not a private event. What we do, though, is people who are big supporters of the ship and big supporters of the commissioning and things like that, and our larger sponsors will be invited to more of the events during the week and things like that. So the way to get really involved is to really support the Sioux City.
They get a little perk. They get some perks there.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll get on the list, and the Secretary of the Navy will call them for a.
There you go.
Doubtful.
And John, the other thing I want to tell you about what we're raising the money for, because the events are one thing. The second thing is it's a big honor for these sailors. These sailors are handpicked to be on the commissioning crew of a ship, and there's a term plank owner, even though we don't have wooden ships anymore. But the crew members of the ship, when it gets commissioned, are called plank owners. And so part of our responsibility as a commissioning committee is to make them feel appreciated. And so we'll present each one of the crew members with a very impressive plaque that they will have for the rest of their life. And when you talk to a sailor who was a plank owner on the USS Enterprise or whatever, that's one of the first things that comes out of their mouth. So we'll give each one of the crew members recognition with a plaque and some memorabilia for them.
Do the initial crew members have any marks on the ship traditionally? Like the sponsor would? I know, Mary, you said your initials were down on the keel and whatnot. I mean, do the initial crew members maybe get to put their initials on the plank or anything like that? Or
no, there is a list of all of the crew members who served on the ship the day it was commissioned, of all the plank owners, and different ships have present that in a different way. You walk on some ships. I've been on a couple destroyers where the crew of 300, and there's a plaque with all the names of the 300, or and it's done in a different way. Next time a destroyer comes into Annapolis and ties out in Annapolis Roads, out at anchor, we ought to get you and your partner out there, and you should do your podcast from the ship. We'd love to help.
That'd be fun. Yeah. That'd be fun. And finally, we get a ship that'll put the boat that's in the harbor to shame too.
There you go.
It's at 630 feet. 630 feet there. But
you were also saying, John, though, that at the break we were mentioning the legacy fund. So a big part of what we're raising money for, and Mary mentioned it too, is one thing that when I served 28 years in the Navy that I would always tell the men and women that are serving that made them different is the American people appreciate them. You can work anywhere in the United States, and it's a great job, and the opportunities are wonderful. But when you serve in the military, one thing that's different is the appreciation you get from the American people. And that is just so incredibly valuable for the morale of the troops as well as their families. So what we're going to do as a commissioning committee is we're going to raise about $200,000 as part of the fund that we're creating to create a legacy fund that will live for the 30-year history of the ship, with the idea that we'll save the corpus. We'll never spend the $200,000 and only use the interest and dividends from the investment. Okay. So that's about roughly $10,000 a year that the ship will be able to give scholarships to crew members or family members, wives, husbands, children, to further their education and just to provide those education opportunities. That financially is really significant. If you're that young family, you're serving on the ship and your spouse wants to finish college and the legacy fund can help out a little bit.
$5,000 is tough to...
But then when your spouse is going to sea and deployed and life is hard, it's tough. But know that the American people pitched in a couple of dollars extra and created that legacy fund so that the family members could further themselves in a little education.
Will this legacy fund continue to be funded throughout the life of the ship? I mean, is that something that's going to sort of terminate as it's off on its maiden voyages? And,
our goal is to raise the money before the commissioning next summer and stop the fundraising and not let not have to continue to fundraise.
So the payout is essentially whatever the market interest is for.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's going to be managed, not by the crew.
Right. Yeah.
Correct.
No. But
okay. There's a investment company that has done this with several other ships, and it's a very secure, well-managed fund. Wells Fargo does it.
Sure. It's safe and everything else.
But I would say the city of Sioux City is very supportive of this, and I can see them continuing on to want to give, and they're the people of their community. They're just very generous. And so nobody is going to say no if they want to contribute to the legacy fund. It just means that they can support more people.
They can support more people. That's pretty phenomenal. Is a legacy fund, is that something typical that you find on most ships, or is that something fairly unique? Because, that just sounds like, I do know the hardship that military families, whether they be Navy, Army, Air Force, Marines, whatever, that go through. And it's not so much, I don't want to say not so much the people that are serving, but there is an equal burden and hardship on the people that you leave behind.
Absolutely. So it's not done on all ships at all, but it's not totally unique. And so basically best of class commissioning committees do this. And so, and it's, as Mary was saying, between the city of Sioux City and the city of Annapolis with the maritime naval heritage we have here in Annapolis, we think there'll be a groundswell of support to be able to pitch in a couple dollars here and create that legacy fund. So as we send the ship off down to Chesapeake Bay next summer, they'll know that the city of Annapolis was out to support them.
Well, certainly. And you've got a real difficult job planning this event without a specific date at this point. At this point, I mean, you're just sort of bringing it all together as what you do. I know you're going to be coordinating with the city of Annapolis. There will be some, pomp and circumstance that goes along within the city as well as on the yard of the Naval Academy.
Yeah, it does. It makes it hard for everybody. And John, I have to tell you, the city of Annapolis, I had the opportunity to, when the Secretary of the Navy was going to announce it, to call Rhonda Wardlaw and she set up a conversation with the mayor. And I could not tell you how gracious and excited the city was when they got the word. And so it's hard that we don't have a date. As we raise money and all that. But I tell you, it was really hard. It's hard for the city of Annapolis, and it's hard for the Naval Academy. And I got to tell you, their enthusiasm for this has just been, I'm heartened. As a lifelong Annapolitan, I was really heartened with the way the city of Annapolis, we actually thought we would have to go in there and make a pitch about how this was going to be a great opportunity. And, Mayor Panelidis was very supportive of it. Rhonda Wardlaw, we set up meetings for 45 minutes with Rhonda Wardlaw and then know they're going to last an hour and a half because she's so enthusiastic about this. So.
Yeah, she's got a little bit of military background in there too.
Right.
That's fine. What I might suggest to anybody that's listening, perhaps those that have considered being a sponsor parent to a midshipman that for whatever reason, whether it be work or life, maybe you've got 20 kids of your own and the last thing you need is another one that eat especially the way they do. Why not sponsor a kid on a ship that will be commissioned here, the USS Sioux City? Yeah. You don't have to, you're not sponsoring a kid that's going to be coming to your house, but you're going to be able to do something that's going to be a legacy that'll be able to serve children for 30 years, whether it's, $100 or $200 or $10. But you can do that donation at USS Sioux City, LCS11.org. And I am very proud that I got that right.
Good job.
Yeah.
And Sioux is SIOUX.
Right.
Which is also a tricky
So, John, it's
spelling.
really interesting you came up with that idea because the sponsor program, it really does provide that home away from home and that comfort. But what does it also do? It tells that mid that they're appreciated. It's the same thing as the commissioning of a ship and all that. It's showing that appreciation of the crew. So at an emotional level, the two programs are very similar. I mean, you're really onto something there.
They really are. And I think, and again, I don't know at what level you're looking as far as contributions, but certainly I would think that a child giving $5 is huge, just as a family giving $100 or $10,000 or
it's about the finances and it's about the support. So we really want that grassroots support. So to your point, if a kid donated $5 or anybody donated $5, that's huge. If a Boy Scout troop decided to raise some money for it, or a Girl Scout troop, or a small group of kids, lemonade stand, this is about the city of Annapolis getting behind something that's really cool happening right in our backyard.
It's kind of neat. It sounds like we've got about 9 months for all sorts of organizations around town to perhaps put a temporary fundraising effort in to support the families of children that will be serving on a ship that will be commissioned here in the summer of 2018.
That's exactly right.
I want to thank you guys. Thank you both for coming. I want Mary, thank you for flying in from Wisconsin.
No. I was raised, I actually live over in Northern Virginia now.
Okay, well, that's even worse then.
Driving.
It's much easier to fly in from Wisconsin.
She braved the traffic.
And Rear Admiral Frank Thorpe, who is retired from the Navy Academy, who lives over here in Eastport now. And, it's sort of like it's like the Hotel California Annapolis. Once you check in, it's hard to leave.
That's exactly right.
Comes on back
I think
here.
We need a USS Eastport is what we need. USS Eastport.
I don't know. They're kind of...
And that would be in the American Navy, by the way.
They're kind of funky there. I don't know. I'm not sure. I've seen some of their boats. I don't know. I don't know how they are. The USS Sioux City is going to be commissioned in Annapolis with a huge amount of celebration, fanfare, and excitement in the summer of 2018. I'll go out on a limb and say it's going to be after commissioning commissioning week in 2018.
Yeah, it definitely will not be during.
It won't be during, but I don't think it'll be before either. I'm thinking it'll be a little bit after, so probably the yard will be a little bit emptier to be able to accommodate the crowds and whatnot there. So I think that makes sense. We don't have the exact dates, but we will at some point. And we'll make sure that we get them out to you. We're going to be following this along. This is a really exciting time. You're going to see, not like it's been seen since as Admiral Thorpe said, since probably 1976 with the bicentennial of our nation.
Yeah.
We're incredibly honored to have Mary Winnefeld here with us today, who, there's a lot of honor going around, who was incredibly honored to be selected to be the sponsor of the ship, and she has left her fingerprints all over it, which is very neat. Your personality certainly comes out, and you can tell the care and the lifestyle that you have with the Navy, the connection. I think that's going to serve the 60 crew members for 30 years very well.
Well, I hope so. I hope that when they're on the other side of the world, they know that they've got a lot of support back home.
That's right. Thank you guys very much. I appreciate it. Again, USS Sioux City, LCS11.org. is where you can find out more information. You can contribute. You can look. You said you're going to need a zillion volunteers at some point. I imagine they'll have the ability to volunteer on that site as well.
We will provide the opportunity as we get closer and we know exactly the number of people and the jobs, challenges we have. We'll make that known.
But the logistics of bringing this in, I mean, we've got the crew, we've got the crew members, we've got I'll call it a sister city in Sioux City to a degree. We've got the city of Annapolis, the Naval Academy, people that are fans. And we've obviously got the brass, probably some brass from Washington as well that'll be here as well.
I expect a lot of the Navy leadership will be here because we're so close to Washington.
Yeah, we're an easy flight over.
Exactly.
It's a piece of cake. They like us here. Well, you are listening to the Maryland Crabs Podcast, and you can follow us on Twitter at MD Crabs Podcast, Facebook at the Maryland Crabs. There's a page and a group. Our website is themarylandcrabs.com. Info at themarylandcrabs is the email address. And please give us a rating on iTunes and Google Play and all that stuff. You can download us. We have episodes every Thursday, downloading at about noon. This is John Fernay, and thank you for listening.
This has been the Maryland Crabs Podcast with Tim Hamilton and John Fernay. Sure to follow them in all the regular places, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and online at themarylandcrabs.com. Take a moment to rate us on iTunes. Now, get the hell out of my kitchen. Seriously, go!
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.